These places just exploded, in the spring, the first month or two before June, so April, May, getting ready for the canning season, and then in June it just exploded with all the workers coming in, and you can just imagine the whole mouth of the Skeena just lined with boats out there, all these rowboats and sailboats and guys just bobbing around and competing for the fish, and getting in arguments and that about the prime spots and jockeying for position and that. So yeah, really a lively place in the late 1800s, early 1900s. So the first cannery on the Skeena was the Inverness Cannery in 1877, and the last operating cannery was the Cassiar Cannery, which was also the longest running one, and that ran from 1903 to 1983. And at this point we have no other canneries on the north coast. All the fish that are taken during our commercial fisheries are all transported to southern BC now or offshore for processing. Peak years, I would say, were the early 1900s, where I think by 1902 we had 14 operating canneries just in the mouth of the Skeena alone. And from there, I would say by the late 20s, there was a slow decline in the number of canneries. Fish populations declining. It's just like any resource industry, you see the boom and bust. You could see that the canneries were out there initially 7 days a week catching salmon. There was really no I guess, awareness of conservation for these fish. And it wasn't until probably 20 or 30 years into the canneries that they decided to give the fish a break and actually stop fishing on Sundays. So that also gave the fishermen and the cannery workers a break. So they gave them a full day to repair their nets, come in, get a good shower and meals and that. But 6 days a week was definitely a lot of pressure on those fish. And the canneries that were upriver slowly were non-existent or became non-existent as the Department of Fisheries moved the fishing boundary down the Skeena River closer to the open ocean. And you can see some of the bigger canneries by then were the further reaches of the mouth of the Skeena. They wanted first access to those fish that came in. So you saw ones like Aberdeen, which was the second cannery on the Skeena, the demise of that, and some of the other upriver ones, Balmoral, Alexandra, Ladysmith, they all became non-existent as those boundaries, the fishing boundaries came down, and the number of fish became less and less each year.
That whole industry, like it obviously was thriving in the area. Do you think they kind of did they catch too much fish and dig their own grave, and then, or why did all the canneries start closing down?
Yeah, I think you can see the writing on the wall. Like most resource industries, you deplete the stock, you deplete the resource, and you get this slow decline. And yeah, I don't think it's any different than any other resource, mineral resource. Like you said, the fish are a resource or a commodity, and out there 7 days a week with that many boats, the numbers just started going down and down and down. And it's not just our canneries on the mouth of the Skeena. I mean, we all know that our salmon go through the United States, through the panhandle there, and the number of canneries up there were just as prominent. And I'm sure they were intercepting a lot of the Skeena salmon as well, and there was all kinds of canneries. And there's still remnants of lots of those too, up in Alaska and the panhandle. So, they didn't just have the Skeena salmon or canneries to contend with, they had all the American ones to the north of us to contend with, and all, the same kind of idea up there. And I think back then, people thought the salmon, there was an endless supply. I honestly think they probably thought you could catch these fish, as many as you could possibly, and you could never deplete them. And I think that we realize now that that's not the case, that even with the technology we had back then, you could still deplete the stocks. And people, like you said, they're just looking out for their family. They want to feed their family, and then they put the blame on other people, which is still happening today. We blame everyone and anyone for, it's never ourselves or our group, it's always the other group that's responsible for the demise of the salmon and steelhead on the Skeena River. So, ultimately I think everyone's probably at blame to some extent, but yeah, and it's just, this isn't just unique to the Skeena region, this is, around the world. This is something that happens, our East Coast cod stocks, have gone through that, and, I think maybe because the Skeena region is one of the last areas, in this this part of the world that still has relatively strong stocks that, hopefully everyone can get behind this and, we can really, get our salmon to thrive again.